Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy. Trying to make this world seem a little more normal. Does it ever really happen? Yeah, no. Never. Fucking ever. But that's okay. And it ain't gonna get any normal tonight, that's for damn sure. Because I am joined by a like-minded person, I guess I'll say. I am being joined by Robert Prevo, host of the Monstrous, the podcast, and also a paranormal investigator and author. So, folks, we got a three-category winner here, and I am happy to have him. Welcome, Robert. How you doing tonight?
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm doing great. Happy to be here. How are you doing, sir?
I get to talk paranormal with someone who knows paranormal. That's always a good thing. So I'm good. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a
Well,
good
good.
mood.
Good. Yeah, I've got a long background in it. So I've been dealing with the paranormal my entire life, and then of course cryptozoology since the early 2000s, if not before. And I'm into folklore, all of it. So wherever we go is wherever we go.
Sweet. I like it. Well, first question I ask everybody basically on this show is, what got you into the paranormal back in those early days?
Okay, so like I said, been dealing with it my entire life. So about as long as I can remember, I was always dealing with the paranormal as a kid. I think it's kind of like any other researcher that's involved in this. They had some kind of experience in their life, and with me, it just so happens that it was throughout my childhood. Had different periods of time where there were different entities, different ghosts, things like that. Always interested in the strange, like every other Gen Xer. I grew up with, all the shows that In Search of, the X Files, and all that fun stuff. So, it was just, I was just primed for it, I guess.
They really were, you know, I truly haven't thought about that in a lot of detail, but they kind of were setting up that generation to get into it in a way. I mean, my generation to some degree as well, but not as much as you guys. You guys had all the cool original shit. We had all the copycat shows.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you think about it, the 70s and 80s, that's when the slasher movies started. So that's when you had Jason, the Halloween, all of that. And then, of course, you had the Howling movies. The different vampire movies got big in the 70s and 80s. We were on the tail end of, well, actually the after effects of Hammer theaters. So,
Yep.
everything was, we were primed. We hit it just right as far as, we had the older siblings or the parents who, grew up with Lon Chaney Jr., Bill Lugosi, all of that stuff. So we were watching the old black and white stuff. We were watching the stuff from the '60s, and we just got hammered with it. So yeah,
Got hammered with Hammer Productions. Yep. Yeah,
exactly.
you did. I mean, yeah, we do a lot of horror movie brackets on this show every once in a while, so I am versed in horror to some degree, just not the older stuff as much as I'd like to be. Someday when we get to those, because I do have a Hammer Films bracket actually, but someone's got to pick it for it to actually get put in, and nobody has yet. Surprisingly, I'm a little bit
That
amazed
is
with
a
that. I
shame.
guess.
Yeah, that's a shame because they really should.
Mm. Well, then again, my topics haven't got put in either yet, and it's been like 4 freaking wheel spins now, so yeah, there's a lot of topics. So it'll get there eventually. We're gonna run out of stuff eventually, yes, for
Oh,
sure. But
good.
but and yeah, I mean, they really did set you up for that. You gotta love it. So, what was some of these ghost experiences you had when you were young? I'm kind of curious
Okay,
to hear
sure.
what they were.
So one of the first ones I can remember, lived in a small town, and I think I was probably maybe 5 or 6. And so, like any other little kid, I was scared to death of the dark. And, most houses were set up to where the parents' master bedroom was at the end of the hall. My
Hmm.
bedroom was on one side and the bathroom was on the other side. So in the middle of the night, of course, got up, had to go pee, sneak across real quick, get into there, before the boogeyman can get me, flip on the light, do whatever I got to do, turn off the light, head out in the hallway, and try to get back to my bedroom. Well, this time when this happened, I step out, turn off the light, and I think I see my mother stepping out of the bedroom and she's getting ready to walk past me. Well, being a little jerk, like, most little kids are with ADHD, I thought I'm going to bump into her. So I go to bump into her and I hit the wall on the other side of the hallway. and I look around and there's nobody there. And so that very quickly got me straight into bed. So that was my first encounter that I can really remember with something that I couldn't explain, because it wasn't my mom. I asked her the next day, I was, told her the whole story, and she's like, no, I never got out of bed. And I was like, okay. So then the next one I can remember, the house was an old house. It was a 2-story kind of split level, had the attic and everything, which was really creepy because the entryway to the attic had stairs and one of those big old doors in front of it, and just happened to be right across from my bedroom. But that wasn't even the scarier part. It was one night I was sick, and so mom wanted me to just lay in their bed in the bedroom, which just happened to be right off of the living room. And it had those old accordion doors, those old vinyl accordion doors. And so she had it all closed off, and it was dark in there, except for the light that was coming underneath those accordion doors. And I was laying there trying to go to sleep, but of course I can hear TV and everybody else out there, and I start to notice movement. And there's just enough light that I can make out that there's these little shadow figures moving all around the bed.
Ooh.
So yeah, and I think back on it now, and of course this is the early 70s, so I don't know if I was influenced by Star Wars and Jawas, because they were about the size of that, so you always have to bring into question, what was on your mind whenever something like that happened, if you're going to be a critical thinker. So there was that. Later on, in yet another house, I have to add in here, my dad was in the Army, retired Army, so about every 2 years we moved around. So we were in another house, and woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this white thing standing at the end of my bed. And the only way I can possibly explain what it looked like is, and it's horrible, but kind of like if you had a hologram of a Ku Klux Klan member. It was that kind of white, just standing down there at the end. And so, of course, it scared me. And like every other kid, I thought my blankets would protect me from everything. So I'm hiding underneath the blankets, peeking out every so often. And every time I peek out, this thing is just a little bit closer. So I finally freak out because it's way too close, and I holler for my dad to come in there. Of course, he comes running in there like somebody's trying to abduct me, because I'm screaming like somebody's trying to abduct me. And I'm like, turn on the light, turn on the light. He turns on the light, and I'm like, okay, it's gone. Turn off the light. He turns off the light, and there's nothing there. So, just little random things like that. Later, after that house, we moved to a rural area. And again, we were in a split level house, and we had a lot of stuff that happened there. We would have a chair that would move every so often, a rocking chair that would move. We'd get the smells of perfume. And one of my favorite things was, you could sit in my bedroom late at night, and you could hear a male and a female voice talking, but you could never make out what was being said. It sounded like you could put your ear like right up against the wall and you'd be able to hear it better. But as long as you didn't touch that wall, you could hear it pretty clear. But once you put your head to the wall, you actually couldn't hear it any better. It got much worse. There's always the thought that maybe it's mom and dad talking. Nope, wasn't them talking. Wasn't a TV on. Wasn't anything. And I had witnesses that had spent the night a couple of times and had heard the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, my house has that effect sometimes, where like it sounds like there's conversations in another room, but like either nobody else will be awake or nobody else will be home, or I mean, there's phantom music too sometimes. Like when you're laying in bed at night, like you hear music and you're just like, there's nowhere it could be coming from.
I get that. Matter of fact, the room I'm in used to be our bedroom, and I'm one of those that I have to have a fan on all night, because I get hot no matter what. I'm like Godzilla. I sit still long enough, I start to go thermonuclear. So anyway, I had to have a fan blowing on me, and I guess it makes the right kind of white noise. So as long as our bed was against that wall and I was sleeping over there, I guess everything was just in the right alignment. I could hear music very faintly. Nobody else in the house could ever hear it if they laid there or whatever. Might say more about me than it does about the noise, but I could hear this music just ever so faintly, and it sounded like old, almost like orchestra music. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, everywhere I go, I encounter spirits, and I've come to realize that I'm actually fairly sensitive to those things being around. I can pick up when something's around. I may not necessarily be able to speak to it or anything like that, but I know when it's there.
Yeah, you're an empath basically. You can
Yeah.
sense it. You just can't. Same kind of supposedly that's the same thing I am. I've been told I haven't unlocked that ability just yet. Maybe next level, but and what's going on, Johnny? Glad to have you watching, buddy. And apparently Johnny had his first encounter at age 4 with the pointy hat entities, waking him and calling him over. I can't say I've heard of the pointy hat entities, buddy, but I believe it. I fully
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of weird things out there.
there truly is, and I mean, apparently you were visited by Cartman in his Halloween costume when you were a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry, Johnny. I don't think calling the name of Jesus always gets rid of everything. Some things maybe. I don't I don't put too much into religion personally. That's me.
I grew up with studying religion. I mean, I was one of those who always wanted to know about different religions and stuff. So I'm the weird oddball who, at about the age of 7, started really studying every religion I could get my hands on. Not just Christianity, but Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Voodoo, Wicca. I mean, you name it. I got my hands on it, and I started studying. And after a very long period, I came to a conclusion that almost all of them are right and all of them are wrong. So I guess, there's also the belief that every religion is personal to everybody. Whatever you believe, I think is probably right for you at the time. So, I used to be really involved with the Catholic and Lutheran Church, but I'm not anymore. And I'm very big into folklore. And I think, quite honestly, a lot of stuff that we think is what we would call paranormal as far as ghosts actually has more to do with what I would refer to as the other or the fae.
Yeah, you're not the first person to bring that up on the show, and I can definitely lend some credence to that. There's definitely some. Actually, shit. I wish I had them saved in this computer. I gotten some shots over the last few days of my backyard cam, and it's creepy shit. It's unexplainable. Actually, okay, maybe I should. All right, I'll work on that while we're doing this. But it's creepy stuff. Like it's really weird, unexplainable things. And I mean, yes, I know I live in a possessed house, so it's not like completely unexplainable, but it's kind of just different. Like I haven't seen this type of stuff before. And the fact that the camera's picking it up all up is just insane. Because it's
Yeah.
proof. I like that. I like that. It's proof.
Yeah, I like evidence. I like real evidence. I, as a podcaster and everything, just like you are, we want to hear the eyewitness accounts, because the eyewitness accounts are really interesting. We're wondering what people are seeing that we haven't seen, what people are seeing that we have seen, but we also, it's we need evidence too. We want something beyond the blurry pictures, beyond the eyewitness encounters. We want something physical that we can hold in our hands. That's what, cryptozoology, if you look at people who study Bigfoot and stuff like that, they're always casting the footprints, because it's something physical you can walk away with and you can say, look, this is what I found. And it's hard to do that with most of the paranormal. You can't walk out with ectoplasm and go, hey, yeah, see what I got? You know.
It's true. I mean, you really just there's nothing like that really just stands out about it. It's just there we go. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So I just was able to save all these really fast, but
That's cool.
th- this thing behind the tree,
Mm-hmm.
I cannot I cannot figure out what it is for the life of me. I can't figure out whether it's a shadow person or I mean,
Right.
it almost looks like the head of a bear too, which freaks me the hell out. But it's definitely not on 4 legs.
Right.
So I mean, there's no reports as far as I know of Dogman in my area, but it's
What area are you in?
North Central Massachusetts.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're up that way. They're everywhere, just like Bigfoot.
Oh, I know, yeah, I know they are, but it's like, I mean, it's okay. Well, this isn't the best way. All right, well, wait, what the heck? Oh, yeah, because of the freaking Zoom. I hate this stuff. Yeah, okay, this is the other quick part because there's the thing we already saw, and then and then there is this white thing right here, like this white red like thing like to the left of it,
Uh-huh.
and in other pictures that completely moves location. Like in that one, it's before the thing in the tree,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
I can't explain. I can't explain what either of these things are. And then the next night, there's nothing by the tree this time. Okay, well, the tree's not really anything by the tree as you can see, but this thing's over in the back by our trampoline. Like I can't. And there's nothing out there that's like metal that could be reflecting off of in my every set we're aware of. Like there's nothing out there that's really metal that this thing could be bouncing off of all over the yard.
I love how it looks
Like
like an eyeball.
I know, and that's I mean, and there was. Did I say the other ones that she sent me tonight or this morning? There was ones from last night that were. Oh yeah, this is it from last night, which someone pointed out to me earlier when I shared it in paranormal group. They're like, that kind of looks like a face, like in the sky.
Mm-hmm. Well, if
And
you go back to one of those that, well, I think it was like the second picture. I'm not big on pareidolia, but there's, yeah, if you'll zoom in on that a little bit, just to the left of that rectangle in that
yeah,
shadowy spot, it almost kind of looks like a scary face right in there. But again, mist and everything does strange things. So
it does. But the fact that in like the face on this one, there looks to be like this flaming head type of thing,
right,
and that's all trees. I don't know what the hell that would be.
exactly, yeah.
And it's just like it's creepy and like this one even got a better like shot of that. Like, I mean, if that's a ghost light, that's the weirdest freaking ghost light I've ever seen in my life.
Orbs. Yep. The thing that
I mean,
crosses all different thresholds because orbs fall into and under cryptozoology, paranormal, and in with UFOs because they actually are an unidentified flying object. We see orbs where we're doing Bigfoot, investigations in all through the
mm-hmm,
forest. And then, of course, orbs are considered to be spirit balls or spirit lights.
yep.
So yeah, they're kind of all over the place. But see, your pictures kind of remind me of my second book that I'm working on right now. If I ever find the time to continue working on it, because I'm busy with my podcast, is Animology 101. And in Animology, basically what we're doing is getting rid of paranormal, cryptozoology, ufology, setting it all to the side and starting over, and we're looking at stuff as far as evidence is concerned. So everything, so like let's see, I'm out in the woods and I'm walking and I discover a big track in the ground and it looks like a big human track. Well, according to cryptozoology, that's a Bigfoot track. Well, the thing is, we didn't see what made that track, much less we don't have enough information to really sit here and say ironclad that Bigfoot is real. What we have is an anomaly. I've discovered an anomaly in the forest, and it's about letting the evidence speak for itself instead of trying to make it fit into a paradigm that we want it to fit into. So, yeah, it's kind of a 101. So, we're starting back from the basics, and I'm teaching everybody about, what evidence is, how to collect evidence, what tools you need, what tools you don't need, whether you're going on a ghost hunt, whether you're looking for Dogman, no matter what you're doing, what do you need?
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, because that kind of shuts up all the skeptics too, who are like, "Oh, you guys like to say everything's this, everything's that." Like, no, if we do it this way, they can't say that because we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be claiming that these are just simply always Bigfoot or always Dogman or
Right.
always some other phenomenon that we
Yeah.
know about to some degree. But I wouldn't say that we don't have what it takes to say Bigfoot's real. There's a
Oh,
scientist in
I'm
California.
using it as a for instance,
Yeah, I mean, because Have you heard about that scientist in California who she's put together a lot of information
Are you talking
about
about
it?
Melba? Melba
Possibly,
Ketchum?
yeah.
Oh yeah, the DNA Bigfoot project. Yeah, yeah. I just sent her an email the other day.
Okay, there you go. Shit, not many people I talk to actually have heard about her, so it's pretty. It's always nice to see a look on their faces when they're like, "What?" like there's someone actually taking this seriously for the first
Oh
time in
yeah,
50 years.
yeah. She's not the only one. There's actually oh, where is that guy at? I can't remember. There's another scientist who's out east, and he's kind of doing the same thing that Melba's did. Melba took a pretty big hit over that whole thing. You know, a lot of her DNA stuff was used in courts, and so they, you know, as soon as she got involved with that, they started attacking her as far as her legitimacy and everything. So, which is a shame because she's a pretty nice lady.
They always gotta attack the people who try to. I mean, they're going after Grover Stance. Oh, not Grover Stance. Oh, him too. But I mean, Patterson-Gimlin. They're going after them for freaking 50 years, not leaving them alone with the questions, like
Oh
trying
yeah.
to disprove everything. And I mean, hell, they even made one or two of the four like go back on what they said for a minute, just because they were like, I don't want this attention, and it's horrible that they treat people like this.
Well, what I find interesting about the Patterson-Gimlin film, you know, is it's almost like a lot of people who are involved with Bigfoot and everything hang their hat on that film. So if that, I mean, they'll, you know, like the Shroud of Turin, they're going to protect that film. And, you know, I think it's legitimate, but if you prove to me tomorrow that it was fake, that doesn't take away from everything else that has ever happened with Bigfoot. That's just one piece of evidence.
Yeah, exactly. I
You
mean,
know, because we have all the tracks, we have all the eyewitness sightings, we have, you know, if you listen to something like Sasquatch Chronicles or, you know, any of the other Bigfoot podcasts, there are thousands upon thousands of people who have had eyewitness encounters, you know,
oh
including
god, yeah.
me, you know. So to say, well, if the Patterson-Gimlin film is fake, then it's all fake. No, it doesn't work that way. It's not a fruit of the poisonous tree thing. It's not like everything stems from that, you know. So
Exactly. I mean, I agree 100%. And I did hear you say you had an experience about with Bigfoot though, and that's kind of got me. That paused me up for a second. I'm like, wait, how did we gloss over this already? like, because I that's something I haven't had that I would love to have. I think until it actually happens, I might shit my pants. But you know,
well, the I can almost go backwards in this because we're doing an investigation right now in Missouri on Bigfoot, and it was a pretty active spot. It's kind of died off for the summer. It's where there's a deer camp, and we got in on the tail end of the activity. We had some hunters who they had killed 4 deer, and they had dropped the remains after they had slaughtered the deer back behind the cabin, and apparently that attracted in one of the Sasquatch that are in that area. And so one of the guys was out on the porch one night during this and relieving himself, and all of a sudden something screamed. And good thing he was already in the process of urinating because he would have been right then anyway. So anyway, this thing scared him, screamed a couple of times, ran through the forest and down, you know, down the hill. So we went in and we started setting up camera traps, peanut butter canisters, just to see what we could get. Um, Nothing really definitive on the cameras, but we did have the peanut butter jars setting out. And when we went back to collect them, one of them had all the peanut butter taken out of the inside of it, and the bottom of it was broken out perfectly in a perfect circle and just completely cleaned out from you know, all over. And any of the apples we set out, of course, were gone. But you could chalk that up to raccoons. But it's pretty hard for a raccoon to break the ass end of a peanut butter jar and eat all the peanut butter out of it. So
yeah,
yeah.
that seems like I couldn't picture a raccoon doing that any day of the week. So that's damn. That's I mean I've heard the Adirondack howlings and everything, and of course, and all the other sound bites that are out there that are famous. I want to say they're called the Sierra sounds,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, the samurai chatter.
um, yeah, it's so they're freaking hair raising, bone chilling sounds. Like even hearing them over audio, you're just like, I'll be driving. I'd be driving my car, and one of the podcasts I listened to would play it, and it would just be like, ooh, like you get that primal fear in the back of your neck. It's like, God damn, and that's why I say I would love to have one of these experiences. I think because I don't know how I really feel if it really happened. I
You ought to be
might be a
sitting in a
caveman.
cabin in the middle of the night whenever you hear that, because I have. We were sitting in
Uh,
that same cabin in the middle of the night, and of course we heard it over the next holler, and we got dressed, went out, and you're talking about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of nowhere where there's no electricity. It's when I say it's dark, it's dark. And luckily it was a starry night, so we're sitting out there on the front of the cabin, and we didn't hear any more screams, but we heard the whole 600-pound owl in a tree, just not maybe 200 yards away. So this thing is trying to sound like an owl, and it's very close to the cabin, and it's just this really deep, ooh, and you're like,
yeah,
we were both looking at each other and looking at that tree and going, that ain't no damn owl. And then later after that, before it was probably early spring, we decided we were going to go up there and check camera traps and all this other stuff. And we got up there, got out of the vehicles, and got to looking and noticed that there were fresh tracks. And we figured out these things were actually in the yard as we were driving up and had hauled ass out of there when they heard us pulling up.
mm-hmm.
So we grabbed our gear and thought, well, we're going to walk out here and we're going to see what we can find, see what we can see. And so we get maybe 100 yards into the forest, and I told my buddy, I'm like, I'm one of these who I'm very against going out and beating on trees and hollering, and you don't know what you're saying, you don't know what you're doing. But and I really hammered that in with him. We're not going to go out there and we're not going to do this. So I looked at him and I said, I have the overwhelming urge to just do a call. And he's like, really? And I said, I know, it's dumb. But I said, I just something's telling me, just do a call and it'll answer. And he's like, okay, whatever. So I do this real deep, real loud, oh, as loud as I can get it. It's not 2 seconds from in front of us, way off to the left, way back in the forest, we get a call back. And he looks at me and he goes, that's the one we've been hearing. And then it's not just a few seconds later, there's another one way off to the right, which is the direction we're headed. And it makes a similar sound. He goes, I didn't hear that one before. And I said, yeah. And he said, I think you pissed it off. And I said, no, I didn't piss it off. I said, I'm just letting them know that we're here and that we're not, we know they're here. They know, that we're here. And I want them to be comfortable with us being around out here so that they know that we're not trying to sneak up on them or do something wrong or whatever. We're just out here walking around looking. And if they want to show themselves to us, they can show themselves to us. If they don't, whatever. But we're going to go out and we're going to try to collect evidence. And we've found handprints in the mud. We've found footprints. And not everything's castable whenever you get out there. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is 99% of your tracks are not castable at all. There's a lot of leaf litter and there's a lot of, not every track is deep enough to cast.
Exactly. I mean, and Johnny said it actually perfect timing when you were saying it. I wish we could decipher the Bigfoot language, maybe AI.
You never
And
know.
it's possible. I mean, it's highly possible. If they put enough recordings into an AI generator, then maybe we could figure out something. But
the problem is that you would have to collect all of your audio data from one area, from one group, because chances are that's like saying, we could decipher Native American language. Well, not if you're the Nazis and trying to figure out the Navajo language, because that worked during World War II. But,
yes, it
because
did.
nobody was ever able to decipher that. But so what one language in one tribe has may not be the language of another tribe. So, okay, so what Sasquatch out in the Pacific Northwest is saying may not be the same thing that Sasquatch in Pennsylvania is saying. It may be a completely different language. We don't know. So you'd have to start with just one isolated group and work with that to try and decipher it.
I mean, it's true. These things are all over the world, so they have to have different dialects and whatnot. I mean, just like we do. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be slightly different, at least, if not completely different. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. It does, and yeah, and Johnny, you're not wrong. There is a dimensional quality to Bigfoots about how they disappear and appear, and there have been stories of telepathy and Bigfoots and UFOs and all that. So, are they interdimensional? Yeah, I hate saying it, but yes, 10 to 1 they are. I hate saying it because I was always on the Gigapithecus the camp for the longest time.
uh, let me think of how to address this. I think there is more than one answer to Sasquatch. And what I mean by this is I think that there is a biological answer as far as a true Sasquatch. I think that there is a large bipedal. I don't want to say ape-like because I don't think that they're ape. I think they're closer to being human beings, if anything. That
Hmm.
is traveling around in North America, South America, Asia, all these different places. I think they're all loosely interconnected. And I think when we get into the more paranormal aspect, like trackways that appear out of nowhere, disappear, orbs that are involved, there's a whole lot what we call mind speak and other stuff. We might be dealing with a whole different entity that is traveling under the guise of what we think Sasquatch is. We actually talked about this on my podcast last night about Dogman, that maybe Dogman, in its truth, is more of a biological entity, just like Sasquatch, but there is something else that has figured out, okay, this is going to scare the crap out of you. And it's in the area, so I'm going to mimic that thing to get you terrified and, for lack of a better term, feed off of your terror. That's,
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
and there are two different classifications of dogmen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember the name. I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but there's one is basically more like a typical dog and it's just territorial. The other one is more aggressive and a lot more muscular looking according to the drawings they have of it.
Well, okay. So we get into. I'm a I'm the lead field investigator for North American Dogman Project in Arkansas. So
Oh shit, okay.
yeah,
Fuck. I'm gonna forget his name now, aren't I? God. Oh, D.A. Roberts. I had D.A. Roberts on one of my first actually one of my first like 10 guests. I had him on the show. He was a very interesting interview.
that's cool. That's cool. So the guy, let's see, what do they call him? Matt Squatch. Matt Squatch is the one who came up with a classification system and the types of Sasquatch, and then on the tail end of that came up with types for Dogman. So, I'm not trying to knock Matt Squatch or anybody else. I don't know how you would validify all of that. First of all, there's the validity of the eyewitness statements that there's no way that you can corroborate completely. So I can't account or discount what someone has said as far as an eyewitness. I wasn't there. As an investigator, my job is not to try to debunk. My
Yep.
job as an investigator is to collect information, collect data, eyewitness accounts, and put it in a database so that we can continue to add to it. That's it. That's all I do. Um, on my own, I can speculate because we're looking at different things when it comes to Dogman, especially Dogman kind of popped up out of nowhere back in the early 2000s when I was involved with cryptozoology.com. That's really when the Beast of Bray Road was really starting to pop up a whole lot in
Hmm.
discussions. There was mention once in a while of the Michigan Dogman. We would talk about other things that were kind of, you know, closely related. But as far as like really being hammered in, it's kind of like we went through this phase where there was, you know, uh, what is it? There was clowns. People were terrified of clowns for a while. That was all over the internet. Then there was the Slender Man stuff that was all over the internet. Then there was the Rake
Yeah.
was all over the internet. You know, it's just everything. And then it's Dogman and Skinwalker right now. You know, everything that somebody sees or can't explain, all of a sudden it's a Skinwalker. Oh my God, it's a Skinwalker. That's been blown completely out of proportion. The same thing with Dogman. You know,
Mm.
and then Dogman and Skinwalker have been interchanged where one is the same and they're different. Or I know there's another podcaster out there who has said, well, there's two different ones. There's Dogman and then there's a werewolf. And I'm like, I
I
have
uh,
I have no idea where you're getting this crap from.
I hate the term werewolf more than anything on this fucking earth. I really do, because it's a completely fictionalized version of something that actually exists.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, if you want to go back to folklore mythology, I think that's where the original idea for werewolves came from, was from people seeing dogmen.
Oh,
But
I think so too. I think so too. I mean, if you go back into folklore and legends and you look at the werewolf, generally what it was okay, it was either somebody cursed or somebody who had in their possession something that they could use that would turn them completely into a wolf. They wouldn't be part human, part wolf like a dog man looks. They would turn completely into a wolf, go around, kill
yeah.
people, and then completely turn back. Usually it was a belt made from, wolf hide or something like that. And then we got into the whole, if the pentagram forms on your hand and, the wolf's bane, yeah, then you're cursed. And that fell over into the Lucaru and then the Rougarou and then the Hexen Beast, and you have all these other different things. So, there's a lot of stuff that's tied in with that. There's actually a book that came out in the 70s, I think. It's called Human Animals. And the idea of the were creature has been all over the planet. It wasn't always a werewolf. There was the were hyena, the were lion, the were jaguar, the
Yep.
were leopard, the were bear, the were, everything. Uh, I'm surprised there's not, were parrots or whatever, but, uh, yeah.
I think there's actually a were seal up in Alaska.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there actually is. You're right about that one, which is kind of hilarious, but, yeah, I mean, it's, the big problem is folklore has been so twisted by Hollywood that
Yep.
people see something on a movie and they're like, oh, well, that's it. And then worse yet than that, you have people who have a responsibility to tell the truth. And because they want to make sure that they're getting, the likes, the views and all the other stuff, they're going to perpetuate that stuff. And that's not good. That's not good for our community. Our community has a big enough problem as it is. And, you've got a few people like me and others, and I'm sure as yourself, we're trying to get our community built back together. We had enough infighting in cryptozoology for years and years. We had, I can't even think of their names right now, Peter Byrne, oh my God, DeHinden. There was four of them. They were called the Four Horsemen of the cryptozoology. And those four guys could not stand each other.
Yep.
So there was a lot of infighting, and we have to get away from that. We have to get to where we need to take ourselves seriously if we're going to expect somebody else to take us seriously.
It's true. I mean, look, even a more freaking modern day example. Look at the whole fiasco around Zach Baggins like a year ago.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that was. I mean, as much as I hate all those fucking ghost hunter shows. I hate them all.
Mm-hmm.
They're all the only show on nowadays I can stand is Skinwalker Ranch, and even a guy named Dragon pisses me off once in a while. But
Yeah.
if you ever watch this Dragon, I truly apologize for the amount of times I make fun of you, but who the fuck names himself Dragon? Come on, dude. What are you, 5? But it's just, I mean, yeah, they're actually getting proof. So I actually love that show because they're actually helping the paranormal field a lot.
I agree too.
But
I agree.
I mean, but all these other shows that have been out for the last 10, 15 years have just been fucking awful. I mean, all these ghost hunting shows. I mean, South Park nailed them all perfectly. I don't need to really go into them, but they're just horrible. They're so freaking horrible. I mean, it's just you're perpetrating this paranormal field and making it a joke like everybody already thinks it is. Like, I mean, not even so much anymore. It used to be a lot worse than 15 years ago. That said you're in the paranormal, then people would just laugh at you.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna find at least one other person in that room who is like right there with you. You're always going to. So I mean, it's creepy. It's just I don't know. I kind of dug myself into a hole here, and I don't have a shovel to get out.
Well,
um,
the idea. Okay, so Ghost Hunters was one of the first ones that really threw us all under the bus because Taps was actually doing a really good job until somebody wanted to make a show. And then when they came in, they found out that, well, there wasn't enough action. There wasn't enough stuff happening. So the producers were making noises and everything in the background to make stuff happen. And a lot of members of TAPS were like, nope, and bailed.
mm-hmm.
And so anybody that's ever been on an investigation, whether it's paranormal, cryptozoological, or whatever, let me tell you the first thing that you need to know about an investigation. It's boring as hell.
Mm-hmm.
You will go and you will be up all night, or you'll be, miles deep in the forest. It's hot, it's nasty, or it's cold and it's wet, or it's dark and there's mosquitoes, there's spider webs, there's all kinds of crap that you don't want to deal with. And 9 times out of 10, you will get no evidence at all.
Yep.
So, like, if you look at a season of Ghost Hunters or Paranormal State or any of these others that were really big at the time, Paranormal Cops was one, Ghost Cops, I forget what the hell it was called. Anyway, it seems like every episode, oh, well, we're just getting all of this data, all of this evidence. No, you're not. No, you're not, because you're not doing a real investigation. Real investigations are hours and hours and hours and days of tedious work to get 1 or 2 EVPs. If you're getting a full body apparition, that's probably maybe once every couple of years you'll get something like that. If maybe
that's
a
like hitting the
lifetime.
lottery.
Yeah,
That's like hitting the lottery on a scratch ticket if you actually get a full body apparition.
yeah. If
It's not,
go ahead.
I would say it's not like Ghostbusters where every corner you turn there's a full body apparition waiting to get sucked up into the ecto.
Right.
Like
If you're in an area where the activity's that intense that you have full body apparitions continuously, I want to go there because there is something really strange going on there, because that just does not happen. You may have the presence of something all of the time or most of the time, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get any really activity that you're going to be able to document.
I mean, trust me, I freaking live with it on a daily basis, and we rarely get any proof. And we live with it, and we know we do because we've had investigators come in. I've had psychics and mediums in this show tell me that I'm not wrong. Like it's just
Right.
And apparently there's more than I think there is. So that was a whole nother thing. But
Yep.
It's I don't know. Apparently I own like a hotel for spirits to just chill at. Apparently I own a hotel that spirits like to just stop by like and chill at for a little while. I guess I don't fucking know, but
You got wanderers. Yeah.
Yep, wanderers exactly. Well, Johnny actually brought up a good point earlier, and I wanted to get back to it because
Absolutely.
He said the biblical giants also need considering. Back when we were talking about Bigfoot a little bit.
Oh Lord.
And yeah, I mean, its examples, of course, of the famous ones: Kandahar, Mexico, Peru, and that Canada YouTuber who just posted one a couple months ago.
Okay, so we're getting into the Nephilim already, huh?
I mean, I've already my listeners have heard me say what I think about them, so I'll let you say your opinion.
Okay, so here we go. I'm getting ready to make everybody really, really mad. So if you look at the passage in Genesis about the Nephilim, first of all, it is misinterpreted. If you look at the original writing, it doesn't say what everybody thinks it says. And then the book of Enoch. All right, so let me try and explain this the best I can. I studied theology for years. So the books in the Bible were not written to be a Bible. That was an afterthought that happened much later with Constantine and the Nicene and all that stuff. So there were all of these holy scriptures that told a story. None of them, first of all, were ever supposed to be taken literally. It's kind of like taking Grimm's fairy tales and trying to prove history through the Big Bad Wolf or, Hansel and Gretel. It was never supposed to be taken that way. Again, see, I'm going to make everybody angry here. Yes.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Robert. Wasn't Hansel and Gretel about Epstein Island?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me into politics. I'll go into politics real quick. We'll
Uh,
never get back.
I know. We try to avoid them on the show when possible, but I like to throw my comments here and there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. Trust me. I have to keep politics out of my group simply so I'll be quiet.
Exactly.
So,
But
okay.
biblical giants then.
So the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is one of those books that was most likely written in order to explain that small passage in Genesis, because a lot of people had questions back then. This was really common. This was done by rabbis quite often back in the day. So even if we look at biblical stuff, trying to prove history or something biological or something current through religious writings doesn't really make any sense. So then I can say, okay, well, if you're going to say that the Nephilim are real through Christianity, then I can say that the ice giants of Norse mythology are just as viable because that religion is just as viable. Or I could say, all right, well, let's look at Hinduism, or we can look at any other religion. But once you start to throw all those other religions in there, then you start to have a whole religious argument. And you can't start trying to verify something with something else that is also unverifiable. You create a chain that is a landslide, or, it's just waiting to fall apart. So while it's interesting as far as lore, I look at stories in the Bible like I do every other folklore. It's lore, it's mythology, it's interesting. Do I put any eggs in that basket? No, I don't. Personally, I don't. Everybody's free to believe whatever the hell they want to believe, and I don't hold it against them. Uh, but if you try to force that into an argument to verify something, like all dogmen are evil because they're all demonic or whatever. Well, we have no evidence to prove that. First of all, you're going to have to prove the existence of demons in a scientific way. Then to say that dogman is a demon in a scientific way, it's an argument that it's like trying to hold water in a colander. It doesn't happen.
Exactly. And I agree. I mean, has there been proof of giant beings in the past?
I
Yes,
think so.
100%.
Yes.
But
And now
whether they hold.
I would even venture to say that I think that the stories about the Smithsonian covering stuff up is true. I really do. I'm a conspiracy theorist. And I don't trust the government for anything. I'm sure that you guys are listening in right now, and I don't trust your asses. So,
Exactly. I don't either. It's just,
yeah.
if the government's trying to hide something, it usually means it's true.
Oh,
Which is
exactly.
what. Look at what they told us during the pandemic, because that's a good time to say UFOs are real when no one's paying attention.
Right. Yeah. The next time around, it's going to be, well, you know what, Bigfoot's real, or ghosts are real, or whatever.
I keep saying the Bigfoot real thing is going to be the next pandemic. I swear to God, next pandemic in 2119. That's going to be the thing they say is, oh yeah, we know about Bigfoot for 400 years now. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
and he's the one that's responsible for COVID-19.
yeah, watch.
Hmm.
And this is actually Johnny's fair question that he asked this in one of my previous guests too, and they didn't really have an answer. But you seem to be a little more versed in this with the theology studies. So, are the biblical fallen angels the same as Sumerian Anunnaki?
That is a good question and a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
So, okay. Yes and no. And it would probably take the rest of the entire show to explain why it's yes and no. But how do I put this? There are issues with the stories of the fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how to approach this without being very blunt. Okay, so let's look at this from a Christian point of view. I taught catechism class, I taught Bible study in churches and everything else. So bear with me. So God is perfect, correct? God can make no mistakes, correct? Everything that God does is what he was meant to do. So angels, according to the Bible, have no free will. Okay. And Lucifer, who was supposedly the highest of the archangels and second only to God, was only second to God in wisdom as well. Okay? So if that is true, first of all, he didn't have the free will to rebel against God. And second of all, he would have known that you can't rebel against God because creation and God are one and the same. So how can you rebel against something that you are jealous of having and having control of? It doesn't make sense. What does make more sense is that there was something going on that maybe the angels felt that they needed to protect us from. Now, there are actually some old writings in the Hebrew text way back when that talk about this, that there was actually an evil that existed way back when, because Lucifer's one job, his name prior to that was Samael. And Samael meant the venom of God. So his one job was to protect heaven from evil. Well, wait a minute. If Samael falls, becomes Lucifer, and he's the main evil, then what the hell was he protecting heaven from? See where we're going?
According to supernatural lore, it'd be Lilith, but go on.
Right. And you can say that. If that's where you want to go, you can go with that. However, so let's play along with the idea that similar to the Greek Titans, they came down to help humanity. Remember Hephaestus, the one who gave us fire and medicine and all of that stuff to try and help us? What is he also known for? Building weapons, forges, fire, stuff like that. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Kind of sounds like Lucifer. Okay. So Hephaestus got in trouble for trying to help out human beings and basically got thrown into Tartarus and demonized. So I'm not here singing the praises of Lucifer or Satan or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm looking at this strictly from a folklore, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. There are a lot of loopholes and contradictions in the story of the fallen angels. So let's set all that aside and let's say the stories are right, that fallen angels actually did what they did and they're fallen angels. If we go along that line of thought, then you would be right in assuming that the fallen angels are similar in storyline to the Anunnaki. However, the story of the Anunnaki has actually been blown out of proportion to try and confirm the story of the fallen angels. See where we're getting here? We're getting a bunch of confirmation bias that's going on because people are telling one story to verify a different story. That's what we call a circular argument. That's like saying the Bible is real because God says so, and God exists because the Bible says so. That's a circular philosophical argument. It doesn't work. It leans upon itself to answer itself. You can't do that.
Yep, like a snake eating its own tail. It just doesn't work.
Yes.
100%. I agree 100%. I mean, I'm not as well versed in the Anunnaki as other people. I know of the legends. I've heard a lot of them, but I just don't. I mean, did the Anunnaki help create Earth along with a lot of other extraterrestrial species? Yeah, probably. I would be surprised. But that makes more sense to me than any freaking magical guy in the sky with fingers like mountain, lake. No, I mean, come on. It makes more sense. It does, really. But it's just, I don't know. And as far as the whole Lucifer thing, I love Paradise Lost. It's a great fucking story.
Oh, yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's a story. That's what it is.
Right.
I mean,
so is Moby Dick. Moby Dick is a great book too. The books of the Bible are fantastic stories, but whenever they're taken out of context, and especially the Old Testament, I don't know why Christians are dwelling so much on the Old Testament. It's kind of like, I can't remember that comedian, Lewis Black. He said, you guys need to leave the Old Testament alone because you get it wrong every time. That's not even your book. Your book is the New Testament because you didn't like our book, So that's true. We don't really understand the Old Testament and we tend to blow it out of proportion and we use it to justify a lot of things that the New Testament really doesn't talk about, if we're going to get into religion.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense, and yeah, the Old Testament is completely. I mean, they're great stories. I agree with them on that. They are great stories. They're great. They're great morals and great life lessons. I mean,
Yes, yes,
they teach you things. That's what they're meant to do.
yes.
That's why they were written, is to teach young people things and make them fear something. That's why
Hmm.
the that's why every religious text was written. It was a fear mongering trick.
It
And
is.
oh, gee, we put them all together in a book to read because we want to make money. One, because we're religion and we like money, and we can't just go ahead and make it our own
Hmm.
without people. And two, because the government's religion. Here you go. Read up. This is what you're gonna have to follow. We took some things out. We added some things. Don't worry about that. Just go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
Target.
So yeah, you had the Council of Nicaea who got together and organized the Bible so that everybody has the same book. Now, nobody gets to read the same book because we're going to read the book to you. That's the way it was originally done. It was all in Greek and Latin and Aramaic and everything. And most people couldn't read that. And even if they could read it, we didn't want them to read it. We're going to tell you what we want you to know. And mostly what we want you to know is don't sin and give the church all your money. That's and
Yeah.
be afraid of God. So the only way to protect yourself from being afraid of God and doing all the wrong things is to make sure you're doing all the right things by us, primarily giving us all your power and your money. And it was about ruling with fear. I mean, even to this day, to a point, churches rule with fear.
Yep. I mean, if for those who still follow, I mean, a lot of people. Religion has gone down in dramatically in numbers in the
Yeah.
last 20, 30 years because people are waking the fuck up and realizing there's more to life than what this fucking book is trying to tell me. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and how does it explain any of the other things that people say they're experiencing on Earth that are not in the Bible? And now we're awake. The plug's been pulled out of the back of our head, and we're out of the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! But
Exactly.
all right, Johnny, we're gonna answer this one last question you did because I like it, and I kind of been thinking about how to dwell into it.
Go for it.
So, how can you research the paranormal and not consider the qualities of the supernatural? And I've been thinking on this for a minute, Johnny, since you posted it a good 10 minutes ago. And my basic explanation is we don't. It's not that we don't consider the qualities of the supernatural. Supernatural is a lot harder to prove, and it's the simple fact that if we try to use things that we can't prove, like Robert said earlier, if we try to use things we don't prove, we're basically just going around circles, and we're not helping ourselves in any way. That's like the scientific method has to be applied to some degree. Otherwise, we're not doing science. We're just telling stories, which is, I mean, one of the best parts about the paranormal is the freaking stories and experiences. But come on now, I mean, you got to have some proof behind it. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And
I
I
think
ain't
you
here
have
wasting
to.
time.
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself a question first. Are you using the paranormal to verify the supernatural, or are you using supernatural to attempt to answer questions about the paranormal? The two are different. If you're using what happens in the paranormal to say, okay, well, this strengthens and verifies my beliefs in the supernatural, whatever it may be, then you're doing a very big disservice. You're taking that information and what we're calling confirmation bias to prove to yourself your own story that you know basically you're saying, well, the Kool-Aid that I drank is the best Kool-Aid that there is. um,
How Jim Jones of you?
yeah. Exactly. um, if you're doing it the other way, then you're looking at it as kind of along the lines as I am. I'm looking at folklore, and then I'm also looking at what happens in the paranormal and how does this paranormal fit in with that folklore. Okay, here's one for instance. La Llorona. La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, according to the story, if we've got the story right, is her husband left her for another woman because she had children. She took her children, she killed them, she drowned them. Then, after realizing everything that had happened and how horrible she had been, she killed herself. Okay, if this is a true ghost, then what is going to happen is that whole thing with La Llorona, the weeping woman, being witness, is going to happen specifically where that happened at. Is that what we're seeing? No.
No.
La Llorona is seen everywhere that there are Hispanics and that there are people who are familiar with that folklore. And that's not a racist comment at all, because you can have the same thing with Chinese folklore, with Japanese folklore, or whatever. The assumption is automatically going to be assumed to whatever culture and society that you're connected to.
That'd be like saying that that's like when people try to tell the Banshee legend, and it's just Banshees are seen everywhere. When Irish people started coming to America, they were seen in America as well.
Yeah.
They weren't just seen in Ireland. Like, it's just, and yes, I mean, and do Banshees exist? I don't freaking know. I have not seen one. I don't want to see one because of what it means. So, by all traditional lore, but I mean, still, it's just. And who wants a screaming woman? I'm married. I already got one of those.
Yeah, really. What's funny is, though, that La Llorona has a lot in common with the Banshee, to a degree. If you get down to the nitty gritty of the Banshee, what Banshee actually means is woman of the hill. And the woman of the hill, a she, was what we called a fey mound or an elf mound or whatever. And they believed that this was where the elves, the fairies, the fays, the trolls, whatever, lived. And this was a boundary between their world and our world. Her one job was to protect that mound. So if you got too close to that mound, you would hear that scream. That's how that all is supposedly started, according to folklore. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know, but that's the folklore. Just like the folklore with La Llorona, just like the folklore with, the Japanese woman in white. It's always a woman in white. I have no idea why the hell it's a woman in white all the time. There's always a woman in white somewhere. Yeah, it's purity.
It's purity.
It's purity, yeah. But
purity and purity, yeah.
Yeah, both of them. But what I was trying to get at with La Llorona is there's an inconsistency. If it's a real ghost and it's a real spirit and it's a one-time thing, it's going to happen in that very vicinity where all of this took place. That body of water, if it's like I drowned my kids, I don't know, wherever in Mexico. And that's where you're always going to encounter her. But we're encountering things that people are calling La Llorona all over the place. So what that tells me is, one, either the folklore has no bias in truth, which a lot of folklore doesn't, but that's not the case all the time. Or there is something out there, or a series of somethings out there, what I refer to as the other, which is able to tap into our folklore, our beliefs, our fears, our, all of our stuff that's in our minds, and use that to get us terrified. And maybe these things are feeding on terror. I don't know. But it doesn't make sense that 20 people in the same night in 20 different states are seeing La Llorona. No. It's too much inconsistency.
Unless they're like Bigfoot. Unless they're really all around, and they're just, the Irish are just the first to really talk about it. And maybe, who knows?
That's possible. When you get into the Fae and the other and stuff like that, yeah, I think they're everywhere. I don't think they were just in Ireland. I don't think they were just in England and Germany and France and stuff like that. I think we're talking about forest beings, spirits, whatever you want to call it. I think it's some, like you talk about paranormal and the normal being the new normal, which I think is true. I think the problem is we look at stuff as paranormal and it's unexplainable when it's actually a part of nature and what's normal, and we just don't know how to comprehend it.
Exactly.
We're just working to understand that.
Exactly. I mean, look at the puckwudgies in my not my home state, but my freaking state I live in. Like, there's forest creatures everywhere in myth and legend and folklore, whatever you want to call it. There's forest creatures everywhere. Every country has it. I mean, God, Africa has 20,000 of them. So, I mean, it is what it is. And thank you, Johnny. It is a great show. It was a great show, and still will be for a few minutes, because there's one question I've been waiting to ask to the end for this, because I'm sure Robert has heard at least of Derek Hayes' Monsters Among Us podcast.
Which was it?
Derek Hayes' Monsters Among Us podcast?
I believe so, yes.
I gotta ask your opinion.
Go for it.
What do you think of the Mirrored Men?
Enlighten me. I may know this one, but enlighten me, refresh my memory. I do a lot of folklore.
they
Is this
are
like Glimmer Men?
no,
Okay,
different,
go for it.
different aspects. Like this is basically something that started popping up when because Derek Hay had his friend calling his experience with this phenomenon, and then all of a sudden, unexpectedly, he started getting experiences from other people about this phenomenon. So it's a group of three men usually who or three men-looking figures who all wear suits and top hats like agents of days long gone, and they basically walk in unison. Everything they do is in unison. If one of them moves their hand, the other ones move their hand, almost like it's a mirror image.
Okay.
Hence the name Mirror Men. So, and there is time to this with the stories. They've been seen everywhere from out bedroom windows on the street to in the woods, and there's a time loss element when you see them. Usually around 7 to 8 hours, but there's a time loss element when you see them. And there are other examples of UFOs being in the vicinity, but that's lesser than most is common with Bigfoot and other creatures. So it's not highly believed they're extraterrestrial in nature. Ultra terrestrial, always a possibility in this
Right.
world. Always a possibility. But people. This has become such a big phenomenon that people have there are people who have written songs about them now, and it's becoming a thing. Like it's the next Dogman, in my opinion.
Okay, so yeah, let me give you my 2 cents worth on this. Essentially, it is a creepypasta. Somebody has come up with a story, and of course, he's going to be the ground floor on introducing this thing. He's the one that broke it open. He broke the story open on the Mirror Man. And once you introduce something like that, we have a problem with people wanting to have their 15 minutes of fame. You're going to have people who are all of a sudden, oh, well, I saw it too. Here's what I saw. People are highly suggestible, unfortunately. So you're going to have a lot of that. You're going to have people who honestly think that they saw it. But what it sounds like is a twist on the Men in Black. So you're taking the Men in Black and kind of revamping it and adding in a little bit more of the paranormal thing. It's kind of like Slender Man or whatever.
I mean, kind of in a way, I could see why you would think that almost, but it's the fact alone that on his show, Monsters Monsters, people call in their sightings, and their own voices are telling these.
Right.
They're using it's recordings of their own voices telling like their sighting, and which to me lends a lot of credence because you can hear their voice, you can hear their emotions, you can hear if they give the slightest giggly when you hear it. Like you can tell a lot more when it's someone telling their own story rather than a podcast or sitting there reading people's experiences, which is why I would never do that in my show, because I think it's complete bullshit to read on people's experiences on your show unless it's like a special or something. But so I don't know. To me, and the Men in Black thing, that's come across in the show. Dirk talks about these things all the time whenever they come up. He's done whole specials dedicated people like Kevin sightings with them, and the Men in Black, they don't communicate. That's the main. Men in Black always, because there's been plenty of experiences of Men in Black on this show too, and the Men in Black always tend to communicate that they want you to stop doing something or stop talking about something. These creatures don't seem to be vocal or communicative in any form, and it's when they look at you that's when you lose the time. They look at you and you lose the time, which yes is similar to the Men in Black with the flashy thing in the movies and all that, but they have full recollection of seeing these creatures before they lose time, which is, if they really were doing this on purpose to make people lose time and forget things, why would they remember them?
Let me add this in. I work in mental health, and I work with patients who are schizophrenic, bipolar, schizoaffective, all these different things. I have seen and talked with people who have very, very strong fixed delusions. And they will tell you a story that makes absolutely no sense with all of the emotion and earnest honesty that you have ever seen in anybody, because they firmly believe what it is. Now, am I saying all the people who have seen that, the Mirror Men, are mental mentally ill or no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying this is something that we have to keep in mind when if we're going to go back and we're going to look at the retelling of a story. Yeah, are they probably feeling the emotion of everything that they've told? Yeah, they probably are. Do they probably believe it? Yes, they do. But I've talked to people who think that there are demons in their rooms that are trying to steal their left foot. So you got to
Yeah,
take everything with a grain of salt, and you have to be careful about that.
I mean, yeah, I agree. You do, especially in this day and age.
Hmm.
I mean, we're up. Well, where I'll leave it is, if you haven't checked it out, I would go check out some of the specials that he's had on Mirror Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you Google Mirror Man, his show will come up. It's I mean, he helped start this phenomenon, and it's by putting it out there. And I don't know, it sounds a lot more believable than some of the other things in his show about cryptids that
Yeah.
we know exist. So I mean, that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I mean, have you ever seen or heard Strange Familiars? The
Sounds
podcast.
familiar.
Okay.
I've heard of it. I never actually listened to
So
it.
there's one that started with them on there, and it's the what is it? The guy in plaid or whatever.
Oh, the Plaid Man.
Yeah, Plaid Man
Yeah.
started there. It started on that podcast.
I think Derek actually had the two hosts of that podcast on his show at one point.
Yeah, probably. But so that started there, and it may well be that it was first mentioned there, and it's something that's actually been going on. I had an experience with Hat Man that happened way back in the 80s before anybody knew what Hat Man and Shadow People were.
Yep.
And I didn't know what it was until people started bringing up Hat Man. I'm like, hell yeah, I saw that thing. That scared the living shit out of me, But so that's always a possibility. But what I'm saying is we have to be careful because you had, just like I said earlier, there was the whole thing with the clowns. There was the whole thing with Slender Man. There was the thing with the rake. There was, and you can go on and on and on.
I don't like to drop names, but I actually am very close to someone personally who had a rake come into their backyard multiple times and captured it on pictures of it, and I can legitimately say I 100% believe in the rake.
That would be what we call a pale walker.
Well,
or a pale crawler.
To me that's the same thing as a rake. It's in my mind that's the same thing.
Yeah. So again, that's where we're having to make sure that we're splitting stuff apart and we're being careful, because once we start to drag creepypasta names in, that's like with Dogman and Werewolf. We don't want to call Dogman a werewolf because the two are not the same thing. When you say werewolf, you're indicating a curse, a human who is transformed. That's not what we're talking about with Dogman. When we're talking about Dogman, we're talking about a creature that is always Dogman.
Yeah.
So whenever we're talking about the pale crawler or whatever, it's not the rake. The rake is a little bit different. The stories of the rake were probably built around the idea of what we call a pale crawler. Matter of fact, stories of Slender Man probably comes from something else that, are very similar. A lot of these creatures, a lot of these things feed upon the same ideals. Something masked, something human, something not human, when you get into that uncanny valley type thing.
Yeah.
If it fits into the uncanny valley, there we go. It's the perfect character.
Which, I mean, you also got to put into the fact that topos may be real as well. So, I mean, all these things that we have in our imagination could be real if there's enough power given to them. So, I mean, that's just the way it goes. And that's a good message to leave this off on. But tell my audience where they could find your book, where they could find your podcasts, where they could find everything about you.
All right. So if you go to Amazon and you look for Monstrous Arkansas, the field guide, you're going to find my book right there. You can either get it in paperback or you can get it in hardback. I am working on a second book. It's called The Animology 101. It's due out in December of next year. If you're wanting to see our group, we're on Facebook. Look up Monstrous on Facebook and you'll probably find us, or we can find you. Usually everybody knows where we're at. If you want to join, we'd love to have you there. We talk about folklore. We talk about everything, as long as we can kind of keep the whole religion and the politics out of it. If you're wanting to find the podcast, go on YouTube or Spotify. I've got more episodes on YouTube right now. I think we're up to 10 episodes, and we're growing. You can find us on Spotify. I think I've only got about 4 episodes on there right now. It takes a little bit longer to download those files and change it all around, but we're all over the place. I'm going to be in Caney, Kansas in September. Whenever they had their Paracon, I'll be there with books. I'll be there to sign books. I'll be there to talk to everybody. And yeah, look me up, because I'd be happy to talk to you about any of this stuff.
Well, there you go, folks. Go check it out. And you all know where you can find me. If you don't know where you can find me by now, just shame, shame, shame. But check out the outro. It's all there as always to help you find me. But I will be back on Wednesday with another interview, I believe, as long as the guest confirms. But until then, have a good night, everybody. And thank you all for stopping by. And thank you to my guest, Robert, for being amazing.
Bye, everybody.